Office of Mejillatores by Katie Lobster and Marine Hal Poirier. Our senior project is to form an immersive Spanish language class as an AP alternative, and so these questions are to find out how best we can structure it and help students learn the language. Our first question is, what are 3 aspects of your class that you find vital to students' learning?
Well, since we all know that students are the reason for which we are educators, my first vital thing is to create an atmosphere that is positive and inviting for my students. So the positive expectation starts with me. I want for my students to feel happy and comfortable in my class. So I show a positive attitude in the things that we do. Then they do the same. Once that is established, then my second strategy is to motivate them in ways that I know they will appreciate. For instance, I keep on celebrating my AP students' tremendous level of confidence and fluency when they have to interact using the Spanish language. I see their satisfaction when I tell them how impressive their level of linguistic competence is. On the other hand, my 7th graders, who are younger students, they get tired of the formalities of the class, so I do things that I know they like better, such as TPR, which consists of learning the vocabulary by acting out, and also we play the videos, we sing songs, and we dance to get rid of stress. Then they work seriously. My 7th graders remember everything I say, so I make sure that I set up clear expectations. My third one will be something that has to do with the Spanish 3 students. I keep on innovating my ways of teaching or my techniques on a frequent basis. Most of my Spanish 3 students are sophomores. They seem to be very busy all of the time, so I have to become creative with them because they get overwhelmed. So I keep on creating lessons that are more practical type of activities and activities that are mostly done in class and collaborative work so they could learn from each other. Of course, not everything is done this way, but I know this is something that motivates my intermediate level students.
Question 2. How should we separate our units and chapters?
Okay, so units are comprised of chapters and chapters are comprised of lessons. If you want to keep it that complicated, you can follow that pattern. For instance, in my Spanish 1, 2, and 3 levels, the books are comprised of 6 units, and every unit has 3 chapters. And I can tell you that there is an average of 3 lessons per chapter. So we're talking about 18 chapters total. If you want to keep it that way, it might work for you. But if you want to make it simpler, what you could do is simply talk about Unit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then to keep it free of stress, you could do what you could do is create a reasonable amount of lessons per unit. I would say 5 lessons or 4 lessons per unit. And that should keep you flowing in the program, and it might not overwhelm the students. That's one of the comments that I always make, that our units are sometimes overwhelming because there is so much to learn. So in my wisdom, I always reduce that content and make sure that I teach my students what is meaningful.
Question 3. How would you immerse students in the Spanish language and culture?
Okay, first of all, I have to say that immersion starts with students' interest. So in my classes, one way to help them understand better the Hispanic culture, whether it is from Spain or Latin America, is creating activities that have to do with the everyday life in Latin America or Spain. Cultural activities is a way to help them get into the culture beyond the language. Okay, if we want to talk about the language specifically, then chatting in Spanish with Latin American kids or Hispanic students here in California or in the United States, it's a great idea. With technology, everything is so possible these days. So I would say FaceTiming or connecting with people in other countries, in Latin American countries, and converse online. Um, so this is a good way to create that immersion that we always talk about. But also, if families are interested in traveling, I would say that there are so many choices. Antigua Guatemala, Copan ruins in western Honduras, Costa Rica, Panama, Peru, España, of course. So there is always a good destination to go to in case you want to go and practice what you have learned. Make no mistake, immersion not always happens by traveling. It could happen by being in your own place, as long as you practice everything you learn, as long as you become open-minded and start to interact with Spanish-speaking people. It really works.
Question 4. What is your priority when creating a class?
I want for my students to get engaged and be interested all of the time. I want for them to learn Spanish in an easy but accurate way. And I want for them to learn to respect the culture that accompanies the Spanish language in its different variations. I can always hope that they will be able to interact and to be prepared for the real Spanish-speaking world situations. One thing I know, especially about Latin American people, they are very hospitable. And my students need to learn that aspect in a vivid way by looking in the eyes, shaking hands, saying polite expressions, giving compliments, and never say, I'm fine, for thank you, you're very kind, but to say, gracias, muy amable. Ahorita no es posible, en este momento no puedo, pero usted es muy amable. You have to learn these forms of the other culture. It's really essential.
Question 5. In creating a class with several different levels, how do you bring students up to the same level as the rest of the class and still challenge the students to do more?
I have been teaching Spanish, and I also taught French for 8 years. I've been teaching Spanish for 23 years already. And in this long journey, I keep on learning on how to do better. So an immediate answer that comes to mind is that I have learned to separate students in a way that is convenient for them, especially in levels 1 through 3. I have students who are fast to understand the concepts, the grammar concepts, and who acquire the vocabulary very easily, and others who need repetition and more practice. In class, I combine those strong students with the ones who need more practice in activities that I call actividades significativas, which in English is meaningful activities. And we do collaborative assignments. Of course, I have always made myself available after school for any student who want to do a one-on-one type of session.
Question 6. Would you suggest reading books and news articles? And do you have any suggestions?
Yes, of course. I would like to suggest, first of all, so far at Priory we have not been able to include the reading of books because of the program we have, which is good. I like it very much, but there is no time for reading of books. The students are so busy that including that one activity will overwhelm them even more. In my experience, Priory students, they need less, but they need more meaningful activities. But yes, books to read. I encourage you to consider this for a conversation class. And here's the first suggestion. My first suggestion had to do with the author from New Hampshire. His name is Og Mandino. He's the author of many wonderful books that have to do with great things. But there is one that has impacted my thoughts, my professions, and my life, my profession and my life. And I will use it as a first step in reading. En español se llama El vendedor más grande del mundo. In English, the original name is The Greatest Salesman in the World. It was a bestseller, and it was published the year I was born, 1968. translated to more than 20 languages. It is a book that talks about how to develop good habits, how to enjoy what you do, and how to be successful in life and to celebrate the compensation of work. The Spanish version of this book was intense for me. Of course, to read it in your native language is always a better idea, but if we're talking about a conversation class, there is book number one for you to consider. If you want to talk about more Spanish-related literature, then I can talk about The Ingenious Gentleman Don Quixote de la Mancha by Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra. This is a classical book. Everyone has to read this. And then I can encourage you to discover a little bit of the drama of Federico Garcia Lorca and read this big-time obra, which is called La Casa de Bernarda Alba, The House of Bernarda Alba, which is a drama, like I said, but it's so interesting because you get to know women of the 30s in Spain, and it's amazing to see how powerful they were already, and it's interesting. On the other hand, I can suggest for you to read libros de Carlos Fuentes. Carlos Fuentes is a big-time Mexican writer. And there is one book that comes to mind right away, Gringo Viejo, Old Gringo. Isabel Allende from Chile, Casa de los Espíritus, the House of the Spirits. And I would say if you include the reading of books in your class, in your conversation class, think about poetry as well. Roberto Sosa from Honduras, Rubén Darío from Nicaragua, Gabriela Mistral from Chile, Mario Benedetti from Uruguay. It is actually amazing to get into this part of the literature. It makes you experience some strong feelings, which I love.
Question 7. How should we assess students in a class like ours?
Okay, it depends. You have to think of the goal and the objectives of the class. My advanced level classes in the past were conversational and cultural approach type of classes. I taught conversation in Central America, and I taught conversation classes in Paris, in the Parisian region. And students were assessed on a weekly basis with presentations and conversations of assigned topics. There were no written assessments, although we worked a lot on the correct use of the Spanish grammar, and we had written assignments. These classes were always exciting because students were not afraid of losing points on written tests, but they were more interested in being successful on more practical type of activities. To me, if I have to compare, those were amazing experiences as an educator, and I know my students were always happy to come to class because they came to learn and they came to develop their linguistic abilities that they already had. It was awesome. It was a great class. So hopefully you could put in place something that could be used in the future here at Priory for a conversation class. I encourage you to do that. I support you. I celebrate your ideas. You asked me if I have some other suggestions, and yes, I do. It is important for students who choose to study languages in general to make a commitment and be serious workers. Success only happens with determination and dedication. Even in my practical classes, I always say, you have to be prepared for the next class. And that means you have to review before returning and moving to the next topic. That is how language is absorbed. One last suggestion is, use music of Latin America. Promote rhythms, tendencies, philosophy. Use songs, sing songs. Practice the Latin American dances because that gives a very interesting perspective to the students. Read poems. In a conversation class, everything is possible and everything may be interesting for the students. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope my suggestions are useful for you in your senior project. This is Mr. Mejia Torres, and I appreciate the opportunity, Marina and Katia. Have a good day. Bye.